USPS threw my package in the trash, so I turned it into a $10,000 payout. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would fight a government agency. But when you work 60 hours a week to save for something important, and then watch it get casually tossed into the garbage, something inside you changes. It was mid-October in Boston, the kind of crisp fall day when the leaves crunch beneath your feet and your breath forms little clouds in the morning air. I'd been waiting 3 weeks for a package containing a vintage watch I'd purchased online. Not just any watch, a 1967 Omega Seamaster that had belonged to my grandfather before he sold it during tough times. I'd spent months tracking down one in similar condition, saving every extra dollar from my job at the architectural firm downtown. The EE tracking said out for delivery, so I'd taken my lunch break late, rushing home to my apartment in Somerville to wait for the mail carrier. I sat by the window, watching people in scarves and light jackets hurry past. When I saw the familiar white and blue truck pull up, I felt that childlike excitement you get when something you've been waiting for finally arrives. The mail carrier, a tall man with graying hair at his temples, moved efficiently through his routine. I watched as he sorted through his bag, pulled out several envelopes and a small box, my box, and approached my building's front entrance where the mail slots and a community parcel locker were located. What happened next still makes my stomach turn when I think about it. He tried my package in the parcel locker, but it didn't quite fit. Instead of bringing it to my door or leaving a pickup notice, he glanced around quickly, then walked to the large garbage bin at the side of the building and casually dropped my package in before continuing his route. I sat frozen for several seconds, not quite believing what I'd just witnessed. Then I bolted down the 3 flights of stairs, nearly tripping as I rushed out the front door. By the time I reached the bin, the mail truck was already turning the corner at the end of the block. Standing on my tiptoes, I peered into the trash and spotted my package sitting atop bags of garbage. The shipping label with my name was clearly visible. As I fished it out, a mixture of relief and anger washed over me. The box was intact, thankfully, but the realization that a federal employee had just thrown my property, something I'd saved for months to purchase, into the trash was overwhelming. That night, I carefully opened the package, inspecting the watch for damage. The vintage timepiece was perfect. Stainless steel case gleaming, blue dial still vibrant after all these years. As I strapped it to my wrist, feeling its comfortable weight, something resolved within me. This wasn't just about a watch anymore. It was about accountability. Little did I know this moment would lead me down a path that would consume the next 3 months of my life, test my patience beyond measure, and ultimately result in a settlement that would change my financial situation entirely. The morning after discovering my package in the trash, I called in sick to work. Something I rarely did, but my mind was racing with what had happened, and I couldn't focus on architectural drawings while this sense of injustice burned inside me. Instead, I sat up at my kitchen table, laptop open, determined to document everything. First, I wrote down every detail I could remember about the incident: the time, the mail carrier's appearance, exactly what I witnessed. Then I began researching USPS policies on package delivery. What I found was clear. Deliberately disposing of mail was not just against policy, it was potentially a federal offense. My apartment building had security cameras at the entrance, so my next stop was the building manager's office. Rita, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with reading glasses perpetually perched on her head, listened to my story with increasing disbelief. "He did what now?" she asked, leaning forward over her cluttered desk. "Oh, honey, we're going to get that footage right now." The security system wasn't fancy, but it was functional. We reviewed the video from the previous day, and there it was, clear. Evidence showing exactly what I'd seen from my window. The mail carrier trying the package in the locker, looking around and then deliberately throwing it in the trash. Rita burned the footage onto a USB drive for me, shaking her head the entire time. 20 years managing properties, and I've never seen anything like this, she muttered. Armed with the video, I went to my local post office that afternoon. The line stretched nearly to the door, filled with people shifting impatiently from foot to foot. When I finally reached the counter, I asked to speak with the postmaster. The clerk, a young woman with intricate braids and a name tag reading, "Zoe, regarded me skeptically. "What's this concerning?" she asked. "I have video evidence of one of your carriers throwing my package in the trash yesterday," I said, loud enough that several people in line looked up with interest. Zoe's professional demeanor faltered momentarily. She disappeared into a back office and returned with a middle-aged man in a button-up shirt with the USPS logo embroidered on the pocket. "I'm Steve Martinez, the station manager," he said, extending his hand. "Let's talk in my office." Martinez's office was small and utilitarian. Filing cabinets, a desk covered in papers, and motivational posters about postal service excellence that now seemed darkly ironic. I explained my situation and offered to show him the video. As he watched the footage on my phone, his expression hardened. "This is completely unacceptable," he said finally. "I want to assure you, this is not how we train our carriers to handle packages." "I should hope not," I replied. "But it happened, and I want to know what you're going to do about it." Martinez promised an investigation and asked me to file an official complaint. He slid a form across the desk, which I carefully filled out, attaching a printed still image from the video. "I'll also need to submit a claim for inspection of my item," I added. "I need to make sure it wasn't damaged." "Of course," he said, providing another form. "We'll be in touch within 3 business days." But as I left the post office, I felt an unmistakable sense that this would be the beginning, not the end. Outside, the autumn sun was setting earlier now, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. I pulled out my phone and began searching for USPS complaint procedure and mail mishandling lawsuit. I wasn't looking for a payday, not yet anyway. I just wanted accountability. That evening, I created a detailed digital record of everything. Scans of the forms, copies of the video, photos of the package and the watch, screenshots of the tracking information. Some might call it overkill, but something told me this documentation would matter. As I settled into bed that night, the watch on my nightstand softly ticking, I had no idea that the Postal Service's response, or lack thereof, would push me to take actions I never imagined myself capable of. 3 days passed with no word from the post office, then a week. My follow-up calls were met with vague assurances that the matter was under review. By day 10, my initial shock had transformed into simmering determination. "You need to talk to a lawyer," said my friend Rachel over coffee at our favorite spot near Davis Square. The November rain drummed against the windows as she stirred her latte. "This isn't just about your package anymore. It's about holding them accountable." Rachel had always been the practical one in our friendship, a corporate attorney who saw the world in terms of contracts and obligations. She passed me her phone with the contact information for a colleague who specialized in administrative law. "His name is Daniel Patel. Tell him I sent you," she said. "First consultation is usually free." Daniel's office was in a converted brownstone downtown, with crown molding and hardwood floors that spoke of old Boston money. The man himself was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with a quick smile and faster mind. "So they've stonewalled you for almost 2 weeks," he said after I'd explained my situation. "And you have video evidence of willful misconduct by a federal employee." "That's right," I confirmed, sliding over my USB drive with the footage. "I've called 7 times. Each time they say they're looking into it." Daniel plugged the drive into his computer and watched the video twice, taking notes. "This is remarkably clear evidence," he said finally. "Most clients don't come in with something this definitive." "So what do we do?" I asked. "First, we send a formal complaint letter to the Postmaster General, with copies to your local post office, the USPS District Manager, and the USPS Office of Inspector General," he explained. "We give them 10 business days to respond. If they don't, we file a Federal Tort Claims Act lawsuit." "A lawsuit? Isn't that extreme?" I asked, suddenly feeling the weight of what I was considering. Daniel leaned forward. "Let me be clear. What happened to you wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was willful negligence at best, and potentially mail theft or destruction of mail at worst, both federal offenses. You've already given them multiple opportunities to address this internally." I thought about the weeks of ignored calls, the dismissive tones, the lack of accountability. "Okay," I said, "let's do it." Over the next week, Daniel drafted the formal complaint letter. detailing the incident and requesting not just an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but also compensation for my time, the potential risk to my property, and the emotional distress caused. I was asking for $2,500, a figure that seemed ambitious but not unreasonable given the circumstances. The response came faster than expected. Just 3 days after Daniel sent the letter, I received a call from someone identifying themselves as a representative from the USPS legal department. "We've reviewed your complaint and the evidence provided," the woman said, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who handles complaints for a living. "We'd like to offer you a settlement of $500 to resolve this matter." I glanced at the omega on my wrist, thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't seen the carrier that day. "That's not acceptable," I replied. "I'd like to discuss this with my attorney present." The negotiation that followed was tense. Daniel set up a conference call where he methodically laid out our position, the clear evidence of misconduct, the repeated attempts to resolve the issue through proper channels, and the potential public relations problem if this were to become a court case with that video as evidence. "My client is willing to settle for $2,000, Daniel said firmly. "Given the circumstances, I believe that's more than reasonable." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "We can offer $200, but that's our final offer," the USPS representative countered. I muted the call and looked at Daniel, who raised his eyebrows questioningly. I shook my head. "I'm afraid that won't work for us," Daniel replied, unmuting. "We're prepared to file under the Federal Tort Claims Act by the end of the week." That evening, as I walked home along the Charles River, watching the city lights reflect on the dark water, I wondered if I was pushing too hard. The watch was safe. I could take the fun $200 and be done with this entire ordeal. But then I remembered the casual way my package had been tossed away, like it meant nothing. How many other people had lost important items this way? How many didn't have the advantage of seeing it happen or having video evidence? My phone rang just as I reached my apartment building. It was Daniel. "They're offering $2,000, he said without preamble. "Do we take it?" I paused, key in the door. "Let's do it," I said finally. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. The settlement check would never arrive, setting in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to a much larger payout and a system-wide policy review that would affect postal operations across the state. 2 weeks after accepting the $2,000 settlement, I still hadn't received a check. My calls to the USPS legal department went straight to voicemail. Daniel's formal inquiries received only automated responses promising that the matter was being processed. December had arrived, bringing with it the first snowfall of the season and holiday decorations throughout the city. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now anxiously awaiting another delivery from the very organization that had created this problem in the first place. "They're hoping you'll give up," Daniel said during our phone call. "It's a common tactic, delay until the other party loses interest or momentum." "So what now?" I asked, watching the snow accumulate on my windowsill. The holiday season was approaching, and I had planned to use part of the settlement money for gifts. "Now we escalate," he replied. "I think it's time we contact the media." The idea made me uncomfortable. I wasn't looking for publicity or to become some kind of postal service vigilante, but I also recognized that nothing had worked so far. Not reasonable requests, not formal complaints, not even legal threats. "Let me think about it," I said. That evening I received an unexpected visitor. I was cooking dinner when my doorbell rang. Standing in the hallway was an older man in a USPS management uniform I didn't recognize. "Are you the person who filed the complaint about the package in the trash?" he asked without introduction. I nodded cautiously, suddenly aware I was alone, with a stranger who clearly knew where I lived. "I'm Robert Kaplan, the district manager," he said, showing me his ID badge. "May I come in? I think we need to talk." Against my better judgment, I let him in, leaving the door slightly ajar. Kaplan declined my offer of tea, getting straight to the point. "I only learned about your case yesterday," he began, looking genuinely troubled. "There's been a serious breakdown in our process. Your complaint should have been escalated to me immediately, especially with video evidence of this nature." He explained that the mail carrier had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, but the paperwork for my settlement had been deliberately buried by a supervisor who was friends with the carrier. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for mail tampering," Kaplan continued. "But we also apparently have a problem with accountability that I need to address." He slid an envelope across my kitchen table. "This is a check for your agreed settlement of $2,000, plus an additional $500 for the inexcusable delay." I opened the envelope, verifying the amount on the check. "Thank you, but this doesn't address the systemic issues that allowed this to happen in the first place." Kaplan nodded slowly. "You're right. That's actually the other reason I'm here. We're conducting a full review of our complaint procedures and package handling protocols. I'd like you to consider being part of a consumer advisory panel that would provide input on these changes." The offer surprised me. "You want my help?" "Sometimes we need outside perspective to see our blind spots," he said simply, "and you've certainly demonstrated persistence and attention to detail." I agreed to consider it, and Kaplan left me with his direct contact information. After he left, I called Daniel to update him on this unexpected turn of events. He was skeptical, but encouraged me to keep an open mind about the advisory panel. "Just make sure anything they implement has real teeth," he advised. The next day, I received another call from Kaplan. The internal investigation had uncovered something disturbing. My case wasn't isolated. The same mail carrier had been disposing of packages that didn't fit easily into mailboxes or parcel lockers for months, potentially affecting dozens of customers. Most had likely never known what happened to their missing items. "We're preparing to notify all potential victims," Kaplan explained, "and we're establishing a claims fund. This is becoming a much larger situation than I initially realized." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. The local news caught wind of the story, though not from me, and suddenly my experience was being featured on evening broadcasts. Other affected customers began coming forward. The USPS Office of Inspector General launched a formal investigation that expanded beyond just my local post office. By early January, what had started as a single complaint had snowballed into a regional scandal that revealed systemic problems in package handling procedures and complaint resolution. The mail carrier was terminated. 2 supervisors were disciplined for attempting to cover up the incidents, and the USPS announced a comprehensive review of operations in the entire Boston district. The advisory panel that Kaplan had mentioned became a reality, with representatives from consumer advocacy groups, local businesses, and affected customers, including me. Our recommendations led to concrete changes: new training protocols, clearer escalation procedures for complaints, additional security cameras at postal facilities, and enhanced tracking technology for high-value packages. In recognition of my role in bringing these issues to light and my continued involvement in the advisory panel, the USPS offered an additional settlement of $7,500, bringing my total compensation to $10,000. As I deposited the final check, I reflected on the journey of the past 3 months. What had begun with a simple act of carelessness had revealed deeper problems that needed addressing. My persistence had not only resolved my own situation, but potentially improved service for countless others. The vintage Omega Seamaster still keeps perfect time on my wrist, a reminder that sometimes standing up for what's right requires more effort than we expect, but can lead to changes more significant than we imagine. When I see postal trucks in my neighborhood now, I no longer feel a twinge of anger. Instead, I feel a certain pride knowing that small actions can lead to meaningful change, and that systems can improve when people care enough to hold them accountable. Sometimes, it seems, justice arrives special delivery,